Hi everyone. So welcome to the Prospective Cabinet Meeting Webinar. As always, all 6 of us are open to answer just about any question you have. All of our emails are our first initial and our last name at texas.jsa.org. Or you could probably text us at our number. If you want to email Steve, email spain@jsa.org. If you email at texas.jsa.org, it goes into a void and it's never seen by anyone or anything. So starting off with kind of like an overall idea of what Cabinet is. Cabinet is essentially the governing body for the state level Texas JSA organization. It's usually made up of about 70 to 80 people, and it's headed off by your big 3. So that's your governor, who next year will be David Tang, your lieutenant governor, who next year will be Logan George, and your speaker of the House, who next year will be Shravya Apparasu. It has 7 departments, and each department has a different function. Each department has a department head, and then agents, or sometimes they're called something else, but most of the time they're called agents that work with the director to achieve the goals of the department. Being in Cabinet is a really, really fun experience. I applied in the summer of my freshman year, and I've been doing it since, and it's really, really amazing. A lot of people ask about time commitment for Cabinet, and I would say that the time commitment for Cabinet is what you decide to put into it. So Cabinet can be something that you invest in like an hour a week. I've seen people invest in an hour a month, but it can also be something that you really, really put time into, and then it becomes something that's really, really amazing. On the high ends, Cabinet can take quite a bit of time, but it all depends on how much you want to do, how much you want to put into JSA, and it's really a good outlet. If you love JSA, if you're interested in the organization and interested in seeing what happens on behind the scenes and helping out. So yeah, that's the general structure of Cabinet. You have the big 3. And then 7 departments, each with a department head, and then about 6 to 10 like agent level positions. As for how to apply, applications will be coming out, David?
May 31st. That is when we will be releasing applications, and they will be due in late June. The date is tentative right now, but we plan on making it around June 22nd.
Once the application has been finished, it's being written right now by your new big 3. It's going to go out basically through all the sources. It's going to be blasted into your emails. It's going to be on the Instagram. It's going to be everywhere where you normally get JSA information. Definitely make sure to try and spread this to everyone that you know. We want to make sure that Cabinet is something that absolutely everyone can apply for. And this is something I want to push. You do not need any sort of skill level knowledge of JSA, as long as you have a general passion and you're ready to learn something new potentially, then you definitely have what it takes to apply for Cabinet. As for applying, all you have to do is you fill out the application. There's a general section, and then there's a special application for the different departments. Just read the packet carefully. It's going to tell you everything you need to know. And whenever you're finished with your application, submit it to Cabinet Application at texas.jsa.org. This is also going to be all in the packet, so don't worry. Quick tip, submit your Cabinet application as a Google Doc. You may not remember this in about a month and a half, but if you submit it as a Google Doc, that'll save us having to deal with the weird formatting effects, because everything is read in Google Docs. So your application is going to be read by multiple people. It's going to be read by all of your big 3. It's going to be read by their chiefs of staff. It's going to be read by your director if you're applying for an agent level position, and potentially also your deputy director. So it goes through at least 8 people. So it goes through a lot of people. So we have it all in Google Doc. We share it all out. And the final decision is based off of like holistic idea of you. A few people may be interviewed. Don't worry if you don't get an interview. Most people won't get an interview because we have way too many applicants. We actually had last year over 120 applicants. It's really, really cool. The final thing I'm going to talk about in this overview is CabCon. CabCon is Cabinet Convention, CabCon, and that's usually held every single year so that all the members of Cabinet can get to know each other and start working in the beginning of the year. It's usually held in August, but this year, over coronavirus concerns, we're not 100% sure if it can happen. If it does happen, it would be great for everyone to be able to get together and have a CabCon in August. but I'm just mentioning it because it's something that does happen every year. There's an in-person meetup. If not, there's going to be some sort of technological option of CabCon set up, and it's relatively mandatory to attend, as along with it being relatively mandatory to attend both fall and spring state if you're on cabinet, especially if you're in the convention department or the debate department. We'll get to those and what they are. But if you're any person on cabinet, if you're a cabinet member, you should be attending just about every single event in your region and both state conventions. WinterCon if you can. If you can't, then that's fine, but definitely fall and spring state. So I think that's all of the overall notes, but now we're going to move into separate departments. So starting off with activism, I'm going to pass it off to Vivian.
The activism department is one of the 7 departments like Lucy was talking about. It was the department I joined when I first joined cabinet. So I was an activism agent, and then I was activism director, and then I ran for speaker. So the activism department is pretty standard. It has the director of activism, a deputy director of activism, and then usually like maybe around 5 agents. And what they do throughout the school year is, I like to say it's when we transform our words into action, and they basically encourage activism at the chapter, regional, and state levels. So like, for example, this year, the activism department is the one that organized the drive at Fall State for the settlement home for children, where we collected like over 400 donated goods. They're the ones who like contacted the organization. They were the ones that connected, like putting everything together, and like they helped them load the van when the time came. The activism department also works on things like the chapter president menu, which is like this menu of activism initiatives that chapters can do, and they like sent that out to all the chapter presidents to give them ideas for activism initiatives that they could complete like on a smaller level. Another thing the activism department has been trying to do, and was going to do at Spring State this year before it got canceled, is planning an activism block at convention, where essentially there's one block without debates, but instead there's like the political fair, like a speaker, maybe a quiz that you can take. So they essentially organize like all these activism activities and like contact organizations, and that's something like the whole department works together towards. That's pretty much it. Next is CIA. I think David's going to explain that.
Yeah, so CIA, besides having a very cool name, stands for Chapter Internal Affairs. And basically what we do is we handle communication between chapters and state. So if any chapters have like fundraising events, activism events, or have like any problems, CIA handles the communication and handles like, gets all of that information and gives it to the state. And that's why I currently believe CIA is one of the most important departments, because without CIA, Texas JSA wouldn't, have all the knowledge. And so there are a couple of things that CIA does. So first of all, we send emails to chapter presidents. So all of like the convention registration, debate signups, that's CIA's job. We send out the links to those in emails, and we make sure that chapter presidents then distribute that to their chapter members. Another thing that we do is that we handle calls. So for chapter presidents, every week or every 2 weeks, we have a call with them, and we basically go over what's going on with the chapter, how many people are signing up for conventions, however many people are signed up for debates, any problems they have, any concerns they have with like transportation or convention stuff. And yeah, we basically just go over that. There are a couple of things I want to expand with CIA. First of all, right now communication's really only handled with like chapter presidents, and while we do give information to other people via like Instagram, we're also going to be expanding it to other people. So like right now we give email updates after conventions. We're going to be expanding those email updates to all JSAers, that way everyone knows what's going on. And we're also going to be implementing some reminds. So CIA is the department that handles communication. Upcoming next is convention, and I think Logan's going to talk about that.
So because Logan is having technical issues, Shilpa will talk about convention.
So in convention, it's probably the most, like from an outside perspective, the most confusing department, because it's not necessarily a director, deputy director, and agents. There's a lot of different positions, from logistics to convention coordination. So the main thing with convention is that you are constantly preparing beforehand in order to run the most smooth convention possible. So that comes down from the convention coordinator to the director of nighttime activities. You can take a look at a more comprehensive list on the cabinet applications, but the most important thing is that you are willing to work hard and always there for every convention. Because above all departments, convention has to be there at Fall State and Spring State. I'll go ahead and do debate as well. So debate agents are, well, the debate department is structured with a director of debate, deputy director, and 8 to 12 agents depending on the year. So that's up to next year's Big Three to figure out how many agents they want to have for next year. So outside of convention, debate agents write resolutions, and those are typically assigned on a monthly basis by the director or deputy director. To do this, they use their knowledge of current affairs, research, or just talk to people outside of their school or in their school about what types of things they want to debate at convention. They also work on designing new debate styles. So this year we had the presidential debate, which was a huge success. Past years we've had gavel debate and tag team. But even beyond just their responsibilities at convention, they are also tasked with creating a resolutions bank so that chapters can have their own chapter cons, regional conventions, that sort of thing. But I would say the most important responsibility of a debate agent is at convention. They have basically 3 main things that they're working on there. One is troubleshooting the voting process, so making sure there's no fraud by either passing out ballots or by or with an electronic system, which will probably be implemented next year. So basically assuring that there's no fraud in any way at those conventions. And then their second responsibility is troubleshooting any other problems, like if the room is out of ballots, the moderator or debater doesn't show up, and they take their place. And the third thing is probably the most important, ensuring decorum. So ensuring that the debate is taking on a respectful and non-offensive tone. And if something like that does come up, then the debate agent takes control. Essentially, the debate agents are the representative of Texas JSA in every single convention room. Next, I'll pass it on to Lucy for expansion.
I really, really love expansion, and it does exactly what the title seems like it does. It does expansion. Started as an expansion agent, then became the expansion director. Essentially, what expansion does is it reaches out through a variety of methods to a bunch of schools across Texas JSA. Every year they reach out to like a ridiculous number of schools. This year I think they reached out to over 50 that responded, over 100 that just in general. And essentially what they're trying to do is set up Texas JSA chapters in other schools. Some good pointers if you want to join expansion, if you're a fan of like talking to different people, if you really, really like JSA and you want to see it expand, those are probably all good pointers to applying for expansion. But it's a lot of organized chaos. There's a bunch of different techniques for expansion that are used, but one of the best ways is really just talking to people, explaining to them what JSA is, and then helping them through the process of starting up the chapter. Expansion and chapter internal affairs, CIA, work together really, really closely. Once expansion has kind of set up the chapter, made sure they're functioning, make sure they've hit like the JSA requirements for becoming a chapter, the chapter is passed along to chapter internal affairs, where they usually reside for the rest of their kind of time as a chapter. But being an expansion is really, really fun. It's all about just kind of reaching out to people, selling JSA to them. It's a bit like marketing, but it's a good time. So now I'm going to pass it on to Shravya for fundraising.
Yeah, so I've been in fundraising pretty much my entire cabinet career. I was a fundraising agent sophomore year, and then I was the director of summer schools this year under the fundraising department. And typically the job of the fundraising department is to deal with any and all fundraising initiatives at the state level. And so typically throughout the year, we're contacting businesses for sponsorships, grants. We're writing them. We're also contacting businesses before conventions. For like restaurant spirit nights and things like that we want to do at conventions. And also another big role is dealing with merchandise. So a lot of the fundraising that occurs at conventions is dealing with working the merchandise table and selling merch to convention attendees. And then also at convention, we handle Miracle Minute, which is the minute at the beginning of opening session where a bunch of people donate for a specific initiative that we do. So overall, if you have experience with fundraising maybe at a club level, if you have experience contacting businesses for sponsorships or know of people that are willing to do that, that is a really good and useful thing for this position. And if you're overall hardworking and really eager to reach out to people, that's also very good. And next is publicity. Vivian?
Okay, so publicity is the 7th and last department that we'll be talking about. I was kind of in charge of the publicity department this year as speaker, and it's the biggest department and probably the most complex as well. So basically, the publicity department is headed by the director of publicity, and there are 2 deputy directors of publicity. One of them is the deputy director of media and design, and then the other one is the deputy director of technology. So the media and design half of the publicity department essentially consists of design agents and media agents, as you can tell from the name, and they're the ones that, for instance, make and then post the graphics that are on the Texas JSA Instagram. They help manage the Texas JSA Facebook, and they help make designs, for instance, the merch that the fundraising department helps to sell, and essentially handles that part of public relations for JSA. The other half of publicity is the technology half, and it's made up of the people who work on the Texas JSA website. Those are called tech agents. It's made up of the head of photography and head of videography, who help put together state recaps that you see, who help take pictures at conventions. And it also made up of writers for the Lone Star, which is a Texas JSA newsletter and publication. So essentially, publicity takes care of all of those things, and they also help take care of public relations. For instance, they're the ones who email news outlets and try to get them to cover conventions. So I guess if you're into technology, if you know how to edit websites, for instance, the publicity part would be really good for you. Also, if you just designing graphics, if you are good with social media, the publicity department is also good for you. I think that's mainly it. But yeah, also, for instance, if you like editing videos, editing photos, taking photos, you could apply for the head of photography and videography. There's a lot of variety within the publicity department because they cover so many things, and you'll never be bored there.
I'd also like to quickly say that you don't need to have previous experience in any of these particular fields before applying. I think in debate also, there's this misconception that you have to be in speech and debate in your high school career to be involved, when you really don't. There's a lot of the learning process involved. There's a learning curve for everyone joining. So it's a good time to try something new that you might think you like. And we'll be able to read your application and see where we think your personality would best fit. So don't ever feel like you're constricted to a position that you've had experience with in the past.
That's actually a really, really good segue into the Q&A section. And the first question was actually, what does the Big 3 look for in an application for any cabinet position? Shilpa kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'll touch on what we looked for last year, and then David can kind of give an overview of also what he's looking for and what the new Big 3 are looking for. For specifically agent level positions or incoming positions, often what we're looking for really is passion. It's nice if you have a little bit of pre-existing experience, but it's 100% not necessary. I will stress this again and again. It is not necessary to have prior experience or prior skills. All you have to do is just have a passion for JSA, display that in your application, and display an excitement and willingness to learn. So that's for an agent level position. I will say, if you are applying for a department head position, so a director position, usually we will be looking for some sort of additional experience, either in cabinet or perhaps in your chapter. And it's largely based off of if you were in cabinet last year. We're going to take a look at how your work was last year, what you did. We'll maybe ask other people essentially how well you worked, what you did. So but those are for the director positions. And those are the department head director positions. But for all the other positions, it's very largely just about passion, about interest, as opposed to like pre-existing knowledge / skill. Pass it on to David. Finish off the answer.
There's like a lot of things we can teach you in cabinet, but ultimately passion is something that's kind of innate in you, and like we can't really teach you passion. So usually we do look for people who are passionate about JSA rather than people who have experience. For director level positions, yes, we're going to read evaluations if you're in cabinet beforehand, but we also want people who are proactive. Like, yeah, we, as in like me, Logan, and Travia, we can assign people work, and sure, like a lot of directors can do work, and that's probably what a lot of people who apply for can do. But we want someone who can innovate, who can think for themselves. Like, if you're able to like encounter problems and then brainstorm solutions to them before we even bring them up, like that's what I want to see in a director, because that makes work and that makes fighting apathy just so much more easier and so much more effective. So for agent level positions, of course, we want someone who's passionate and dedicated to JSA. But for director level positions, we especially want someone who is proactive.
I guess to just like iterate what like David said, like if you're proactive, show initiative, and like in your app, like show that you care about whatever position you apply for and like you have interest in it. That's pretty much all we like want.
I will also say, I'm assuming y'all are still doing this, but you can apply for up to 3 positions. You rank them first, second, and third, and you fill out a special application for your first application. But I would strongly encourage everyone applying to put 3 positions that you would like to be in. So fill in a first choice, a second choice, and a third choice, because often people do not get their first choice. Sometimes they don't even get their second choice, but sometimes they get their third choice and they're actually really, really happy with it. So I would really recommend that everyone fill in a first, second, and third choice when you're applying for cabinet. A lot of people are shuffled between the departments because sometimes there are too many applications for one department and not enough for another, or just like issues in that. And if we think you're a qualified applicant, often sometimes, you know, you'll be kind of shuffled somewhere else. And a lot of times people end up really, really liking those. So yes. Next question is, if people weren't able to make this webinar, is there a recording of this later that they could view? Yes, this is going to be recorded, put out on all JSA social media. The next question is, what are the departments? So a quick rundown: Activism, CIA or Chapter Internal Affairs, Convention, Debate, Expansion, Fundraising, and Publicity. This is also going to be in the application. It's going to be very, very laid out, very clear, so you can definitely look at it there too. The next question is, compared to mid-year apps, how many agent positions within each department will be open to be filled? So mid-year apps, just as a quick overview, are the apps that are released after fall state to fill in essentially like blank positions. So for example, if someone decided to leave cabinet or was fired, or maybe we felt like we didn't add enough people into the department in the beginning of the year, that's the only case really in which a mid-year app would be released for that position. So it's very, very rare to have a bunch of mid-year apps, mid-year positions open. I think this year we took about 10 new agents, and even that was a lot for mid-year apps. So in the summer, we have about 70 or 80 positions open, and as opposed to mid-year where there's like 1 or 2 positions open in each department. I guess we'll go quickly per department. We sort of did this in the department section, but Activism is usually kind of small. It's like 5 or 6 people, 5 or 6 agents, and then a director. CIA is like medium-ish. It's like 8, 10.
We have 8 people from summer applications, and then we added 3 people from mid-year applications, so we have 11 agents total.
Right, so it's medium-ish at 11. Convention is?
So convention, we didn't have to add any new people during mid-year apps. It stays the same. I can actually run through the positions really fast because I realized we didn't do that. So there's convention coordinator, assistant convention coordinator, director of logistics, deputy director of logistics, quizmaster, quiz minion, director of special and nighttime activities, or Santa, event liaison for fun, director of political communications. So because they're not all agent positions, most of these people are tasked with pretty big responsibilities, and they typically don't get replaced. So you won't see many applications in the mid-year application for convention.
So convention is also a medium-ish department. Debate is a very large department. You got a director, a deputy, and then like 10 to 12 agents, mostly because they have to do a lot of important convention stuff. Expansion is like a medium-ish department. You have like 8 to 10 agents, a director and a deputy. Probably not 10, maybe like fundraising is like small to medium. It's like 7 to 8 people. And then publicity is a behemoth. It's like, I think like 13, 12, 14? 14, there we go. It's a behemoth. So yeah. All right. The next question is, will there be a, oh, I'm scrolling weirdly. Will there be a separate application for director and deputy director positions that is due earlier, or is it the same as regular cabinet apps? David is nodding, so yes, you will have to turn in your application for director and deputy earlier. It'll be on the same packet, it's just you have an earlier submission date. So remember when I said you had to rank like your first, second, and third choice? If in those, you're in your first, second, or third choice, one of them is for director or for, I think, also chief of staff, you're going to have to submit your application a little bit earlier, just so it can be considered a bit earlier, because a lot more people are going to read your application if you're applying for a director position, since those are pretty crucial. Also, that
really quick, only fill out a special for the application tailored to your position for your first choice. So you don't have to do it for every single option.
And also, this is all tentative, but director level positions, I should have specified, are due June 22nd, and then agent level positions are due June 26th. So that is a Monday and a Friday.
Just read the application packet. It'll be pretty explicit. Let's see. The next question is, what types of tasks are agents responsible for? This is different per department. It's varies wildly. So if you have a more specific question about specific departments, you can go rewatch the video, or you can ask the current director, any of the big six currently or next year. But it varies wildly per department. The next question is, can you please explain what pre-con is / who is a part of it? So pre-con is essentially the pre-convention team. They go to convention a day early. Certain positions on convention are part of the pre-con team. It'll be marked in the application, and for these positions, it is 100% required to go a day early. So this includes the convention coordinator, obviously, the assistant convention coordinator, and a variety of other positions in convention. Also, it includes the big six. It's essentially the people who go to set up the convention ahead of time, tear a lot of name tags. It depends per year who is technically a part of it, but you can see the convention positions that are pre-con marked on there. The only non-convention, non-big six person would be the director of debate. So it's essentially just people that are essential for setting up the convention ahead of time. The next question is, when are applications due? David said tentatively the 22nd and the 26th of June. This is going to be in the application packet, so just read carefully, read to succeed. Next question is, who would you say has more sway over the outcome of agent applications, the big three or department directors? I'll go ahead and answer it from like the past perspective, and then David, you can cover the new big three. So what we did last year was essentially the big three working with various other people chose the new directors for the department, and then the new directors were given a very, very big say into who their agents were going to be. They also chose their deputy director, and the deputy director worked with them in reading all of those applications. Another important person is if you were an agent before your previous director, so your previous director gives you a rating, and that's taken into account as well. There are times when the big three will have to make, like, this is a weird way to say it, but like executive decisions if a department is too big or if there's like something that needs to be switched. But most of the time, it is the director of the department, the new director of the department that makes the decisions. And I'll pass it on to David.
Yeah, so basically big three chooses the directors. Directors choose deputy directors, and then the directors and the deputy directors choose agents. Us, as in the big three, just approve them, and we make changes when necessary, but most of the power is given to directors.
Okay, The next question, oh, this is an interesting one. It says, how do you apply for National Cabinet? So National Cabinet, or NatCab for short, is the National Cabinet of JSA. If you would like to apply for National Cabinet, reach out to David Tang, so dtang@texas.jsa.org. National Cabinet is usually reserved for if you have like a lot of experience in JSA in a specific area, but honestly, some of the positions you probably don't need a ton of experience for. You just need like general JSA passion kind of thing. But it's definitely much less people apply for National Cabinet. I would recommend if you do submit an application for National Cabinet, if you do end up deciding to apply, also submit an application for State Cabinet. What positions for National Cabinet are there? That's the next question. It kind of pairs together. It depends per year. Wait for the application to come out. If you would like to see last year's application to see what positions there were last year, you can go ahead and email me and I'll send it to you. It is 10 people, usually comprised of juniors and seniors that have previously had a lot of experience in JSA. But yeah, it's only 10 people. And what's a good way of saying this? It's a little lonely because it's so small and everyone is very spread out because it's across the nation, right? There's probably only going to be 1 or 2 Texas people on there. I would say Cabinet, JSA State Cabinet is a lot more fun. I'm
going to say like State Cabinet is the place where you can see the impact of your policies, like what sort of things you're implementing. So State Cabinet is a lot closer to the people than National Cabinet is.
One minor difference is that like where State Cabinet we have like directors, deputies, and agents. National Cabinet is just like one person like per department. So there's like one chief of staff, there's like one debate director. There's no like national debate agents, just one director. So yeah, that's why there's only like 10 positions instead of like 70.
It's also not a lot of fun. Apply for State Cabinet. State Cabinet is definitely much more fun. No offense to all the NAGCAB people out there, but State Cabinet is definitely way more fun. Okay. The next question is, can you have the same position for more than 1 year? Yes, you can. Hopefully you were good at the position, but I'm sure if you're reapplying for the position, you're probably pretty good at it. The next question, for CapCon, where is it usually located and how has transportation worked with CapCon?
Yeah, so it'll be in with, this is Steve, by the way. I'm going to talk to the big three and we're going to come to a conclusion about where it should be based on a lot of different circumstances. Price of the place, convenience, that sort of thing. So it's TBD. It's been in Houston for many years, but it could be in San Antonio or some other place if we deem it that to be the best fit.
Right. So read the cabinet application. It'll be on the cabinet application when it comes out, maybe, or it might not be. Just keep your communication.
It probably won't be. It probably won't be because we're not signing contracts until July or something like that.
Just kidding. And then for the second part of the question, how has transportation usually worked with CapCon? Unfortunately, it's usually kind of like a do your own transportation type thing. I know a bunch of people like will get together, like a chapter will get together and have like one parent drive everyone up. Unfortunately, that's kind of the case with transportation. Maybe this year some things can change. But yeah, that was the last question. We'll be on for maybe 5 more minutes if anyone has any final questions that they would like to into the question box. But as always, you can reach out to any of us on here for questions. Maybe the new big three would actually be better to reach out to because they're going to be the people who are actually reading your cabinet applications and writing the new applications. So reach out to them or reach out to us. It's fine too. We'll be here to answer questions. So I really hope that everyone does apply for cabinet. It's really a great opportunity. I can definitely say it was life-changing for me. It's a lot of fun. You meet some really great people from all across the state. Oh, so cute, Logan. Does anyone have any kind of like final thoughts, final words?
One last thing. I would just like to say, if you don't end up in the position that you initially wanted, my advice is to take it in stride. So I actually didn't get my first choice position for agent when I first applied. I got my second choice, which was agent. and it ended up being a really good fit for me. So I would say, like, always give it a shot, no matter what.
Seeing as I don't think we have any more questions coming in, I would like to thank everyone for attending this webinar. Already attending this webinar already shows your kind of like interest, and watching it later obviously will also show your interest, just not in a very direct way. That's so odd way of saying it. But thank you everyone for joining this webinar. Thank you to everyone who watches this later, and please apply for Cabinet. It's a fun time.